The parts of you that you judge, fear, and try to hide, they're not your enemy. They're your invitation to heal, integrate, and finally become whole. I'm Ed Hegan, a former New York City firefighter and a mindfulness meditation and breathwork guide. And I've learned that some of the most dangerous fires we face are burning deep inside of us. The buried guilt, the shame, the anger, the pain that we were never taught to sit with. Shadow work is about turning towards those hidden parts. Not to fix, not to fight them, but to understand them. It's an act of radical courage, compassion, but also of freedom. And it begins with presence and awareness with yourself. So let's become more aware and present with ourselves by sharing a few deep breaths. And we'll exhale all the air out of our lungs. Take a deep breath in through the nose and fill up your belly. Hold and exhale softly. As you exhale, just drop more into your body. Inhale through the nose, fill your belly. Hold. 4, 3, 2. Let it soften. Breathe in slowly through the nose, peace and acceptance. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Breathe into your heart. Let your heart soften and open. And you're safe to explore and open up to anything that you might be feeling, especially during shadow work. We're not going to do any shadow work. Well, I guess even talking about shadow work is shadow work to some extent, because you're building awareness. Carl Jung has a saying that goes, "That which we do not make conscious will drive our behavior, and we will call it fate." Well, something like that. I probably butchered that quote, but it's a great quote, and it's true. That the things that we are unaware of really do drive our behavior. And the shadow is the part of us that we deny and suppress or reject for a multitude of reasons. And everyone has a shadow side. It was formed typically in childhood when we were learned and taught and shown what was acceptable and what was not. So if we were taught that certain things were unacceptable, I'll speak for myself here. When I was younger, sadness was not acceptable. Weakness was not acceptable. I was not punished, but I would be made fun of or teased by other kids or told to stop being a crybaby. And so I would learn to suppress and repress the sadness or the fear or anything that was perceived as a weakness because I was afraid that I would be seen as less than. And so for me, I carried around a lot of anger through my adolescence and adulthood. And really the anger was protecting me from expressing any fear or sadness. And so our shadow in that way holds not only our pain, but also our gifts, our power, and our potential. Because if we can relearn, or if we can reparent ourselves, reparenting our inner child, we can reteach ourselves how to have a healthy relationship with these emotions that we were often taught to shut down or repress or suppress. And in a lot of situations, including myself, suppressing and repressing and depressing those feelings, those emotions, it was something that really, using alcohol for me was a great way to just pour some magic elixir on it, and all those feelings kind of disappeared. And so being numb and distracting myself with partying was a way for me to just not have to address and face the deeper truths of some of the emotions that I really just, not only did I not feel comfortable expressing them, but I literally did not have the tools. No one ever taught me to identify sadness or to express it in a healthy way. And so I had no choice but to kind of figure that out as an adult. But until I figured that out, I had to go through a lot of pain. And I had to go through a lot of repressed emotion. And when we repress those emotions, they will manifest themselves in a myriad of unhealthy ways, typically through addiction. So when we start to realize that sometimes the very thing that we're trying to hide is not something bad, but completely natural, well, then it's our responsibility to learn how to process those emotions in a healthier way and have a healthy relationship with those emotions. And if we don't do that work, it's going to manifest itself in some unhealthy ways. And so shadow work really requires that we bring loving awareness to the parts of ourselves that we've hidden, because there's a lot of shame and guilt and tenderness built around those emotions. So we should be gentle, not to shame them, but to heal them, to heal the feelings that we've locked inside for so long. And if we really want to figure out where we want to do the work, a good way to get a signpost for where the work needs to be done is when we have triggers. So triggers are like these golden keys that they show up where the shadow lives. And so if we get triggered by something, we might want to investigate it. Also, there's this saying that goes, if you spot it, you got it. Meaning, if you see a behavior in somebody else that is irritating or annoying or just gets under your skin, there's a very good chance it's reflecting back to you, something that's in your shadow. And you can look at that and criticize that person and that have contempt for that person and think that maybe you want to stand the judgment of that, or like criticize like what kind of defect that says about them. But if you really take a look at it, you can recognize that the reason that you're having that reaction is because it triggers something that is present within you. So instead of judging the other, much better off we take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and maybe ask ourselves, why does that annoy me? Why does that trigger me? Because you don't heal the shadow by judging it. You heal the shadow by listening to it, by developing a relationship with it. And it can be both light and dark. It can be both wounded and wise. See, wholeness is the goal, not perfection. So when wholeness is the goal, we can say, hey, how can we hold space for all of the parts of us? Not just the joy and the good mood and the fun time, but how can we also embrace the shadow side, the shame, the guilt, the fear of abandonment, neglect, the wounds from childhood? Because if we ever think that the aim of life is to get to the point where we're just happy and full of joy all the time, that's not reality. The truth is that the emotional intelligence of shadow work is beautiful because it brings equanimity to our world. And what I mean by that is there's never going to come a time where we're not dealing with stress, where we're not dealing with challenge. There's never going to come a time where we are not inundated with some kind of task or challenge in our personal, professional, spiritual world. Physically, even as we get older, we're going to face challenges. And so when we recognize that life is not about reaching this plateau where everything is rainbows and butterflies, what happens is our emotional intelligence and the shadow work brings awareness to those parts of us that we've often tried to hide. And what we're able to do is find this balance of equanimity, where we can make space for the joy, the gratitude, for health, wellness, connection, life in general. But while we're celebrating with gratitude and happiness and appreciation, we can also hold space for sadness, grief, mourning, loss, fear, confusion, all the things. That is integration. That is wholeness. That is reality, folks. That is the world we live in. That is what it means to be in this human flesh suit. And so we can start to recognize that shadow work is the opportunity not to uncover the soft white underbelly and be vulnerable to the point where we have to reveal our deepest, darkest secrets. It's not about that. It's about developing awareness around the things that drive our behavior. Because if we're allowing the parts of us that are filled with shame, guilt, and fear to run our lives and sit in the driver's seat, metaphorically, they're not going to drive us in a great direction. We want to be careful when we think about why we're making decisions, what words we're speaking, how we're interacting, what choices we're making and why we're making them. Because if we're making decisions from a place of fear, from a place of dread, from a place of shame or guilt, the energy behind that decision is going to be affected by that. So we can be mindful that we want to bring ourselves to a place where we can at least integrate and accept, hey, I'm feeling a little guilty about this, or I'm feeling a little afraid that if I do this or say this, and just bringing awareness to that decision, bringing awareness to the feeling, bringing awareness to some of the drives of the shadow behind why we're doing what we're doing is a really healthy way for just to honor ourselves. And in this way, we can be more authentic, because everybody's got this. Everybody has these deep shadows that drives our behavior. And when we start to recognize this, we can also have compassion for people who struggle to recognize their shadow. And sometimes you can clearly see that the shadow is driving someone's behavior. And so when you recognize that, and you recognize that we all have it, well, that can help us to connect even more deeply. It can help us to be more vulnerable and say, hey, I feel that way sometimes. Sometimes that's exactly how I react. I know what you're going through. And in that empathy and vulnerability, we can give other people permission to heal and to hold space for them, to dare to reveal the truth, some of the pain they've been carrying in their heart. And you can invite someone to do that simply by sharing your truth or sharing your experience. And in that way, you become for other people what you need when you're going through a tough time. And I believe that's kind of the purpose of life, is to learn our lessons and then to share and integrate those lessons into our lives in a way that it helps other people. If in no other way, then it helps people to feel less alone. That's a beautiful thing, because we all want to feel that connected. We all want to feel like, we're not broken and there's not something wrong with us when we're going through a tough time. So it's nice to be reminded that it's natural and normal. And so when we understand that everything we've ever repressed has a reason, it was a way to protect you at one time in your life. Because when you were a child, if you express certain things, you remember that it was something that wasn't accepted. And so you can even say thank you to it. Thank you for protecting me when I was young, because it was a way of you developing the skills to protect your heart, to protect your feelings, and to keep yourself safe. And in that way, you can simply say thank you to yourself. Because the shadow is not a flaw. It's just like a forgotten part of our soul. And when it's remembered and honored and seen for the truth of what it was trying to do to protect you, it will no longer have control over you. So the more that you understand your shadow, the less it controls you unconsciously. And that's a beautiful thing, because then you become more consciously aware. You live with more intention, with more integration of the lessons that we're learning, and we become more emotionally intelligent in ways that we can show up as the greater potential of ourselves. And we can really learn to grow in love and acceptance of those parts of ourselves that we used to hide. And so integration is a form of love. It's about seeing all of yourself without turning away from it. You don't have to be afraid of your darkness. It's where your power lives. So if you're feeling powerless sometimes, let's investigate what it is we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and let's make friends with those parts of ourselves. I sometimes imagine it like you're hearing these growls and these groans from the demons in the basement. And it seems like it's really scary to confront those things and face those demons. But if you go down there into the dungeon, into the basement, and you turn on the light and you shine the light of awareness back there, and you start to see with truth. And if you do it with someone else, it's even better. If you want to do it with me, you can send me a DM or sign up for a discovery call at edwoodstock.com. And we can guide you through some of that shadow work. But when you go with somebody or you do it on your own and you shine the light of awareness on these scary, slimy, growly demons that are deep and dark in the recesses of our psyche, when you shine the light of awareness on it, they don't seem that scary. And not only do they not seem that scary, but sometimes your demons will come back around. And you can even make friends with them. Oh, there you are, sadness. Oh, depression during the wintertime. My old friend, melancholy or irritability and frustration. Oh, I know you guys. And they don't have to be so scary. The more we repress them and the more we suppress them, the more power they have. They drive our behavior unconsciously, drive our patterns, drive our habits. And it's usually not a good turnout. It doesn't work out too well when we allow those unconscious behaviors to drive our lives. So I invite you to consider the possibility of investigating those shadows. The things that you judge, the things that you fear, the things that you're afraid of. Sit with them. Breathe with them. Shadow work is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the truth of who you already are, including the parts of you that were once left behind. Because you're not broken. You're a layered, complex, multifaceted human being. And you are entirely worthy of love and understanding and acceptance. So might we meet our shadows with compassion and to begin to walk the path of true freedom. And as we learn to integrate these shadows and practice more self-care and learn to fully accept ourselves, we can learn to love and care for ourselves. And in that way, we become whole and complete, like we always have been, but we really feel whole and complete. And we become that version of ourselves that we needed when we're going through a tough time. And we can become that version and that support for other people. And so that's why it's so important to do shadow work, practice awareness, breathe deeply, and practice the self-care necessary to take care of ourselves so we can take care of each other.